The day my boss accused me of stealing from him, my whole world collapsed. After serving him faithfully for 12 years, he called the police and threw me out like a criminal. But what he didn't know was that a stranger was watching everything that day. And years later, that same stranger would change my life forever, while my wicked boss would live to regret the day he humiliated me. My name is Chinedu, and this story still feels like a painful dream whenever I remember it. I grew up in a poor village where survival was never easy. My father died when I was just 10 years old, leaving my mother to raise 4 children alone. Life became extremely difficult. Sometimes we slept hungry. Sometimes we wore the same clothes for months. But my mother always told me one thing. My son, no matter how hard life becomes, never steal. Hard work will always reward you one day. Those words stayed in my heart. When I turned 18, I left the village and moved to the city in search of work. That was how I met Mr. Adewale, the man who would later destroy my life. Mr. Adewale owned a large electronics shop in the market. He was rich, powerful, and feared by many workers. When I begged him for work, he looked at me from head to toe and said coldly, "You look strong. I need someone to carry goods and clean the shop." I quickly agreed. At first, I was grateful, but soon I realized something. Mr. Adewale was a very cruel man. He shouted at workers constantly. He insulted people in front of customers. Sometimes, he refused to pay workers for months. But I endured everything because I had a family depending on me. For 12 years, I worked faithfully in that shop. I arrived before everyone. I closed the shop every night. I protected his goods like they belonged to me. Many customers even trusted me more than they trusted him. But despite all my loyalty, Mr. Adewale never appreciated me. One terrible afternoon, everything changed. Mr. Adewale stormed into the shop with anger burning in his eyes. He shouted my name loudly. "Chinedu!" I rushed over immediately. Before I could speak, he slapped me hard across the face. The entire shop became silent. Customers and workers stared at us in shock. "Where is the money you stole from my office?" he yelled. My heart nearly stopped. "Sir, I don't understand," I said nervously. But he refused to listen. He accused me of stealing 500,000 naira from his safe. I begged him to believe me. I swore on my mother's life that I had never touched his money. But Mr. Adewale had already made up his mind. He called the police, right there in front of everyone. The officers grabbed me like a criminal. Customers whispered. Some laughed. Some shook their heads in disappointment. After 12 years of loyalty, my boss had turned me into a thief. That was the most humiliating day of my life. But what nobody knew was that someone else had been watching quietly that afternoon. A middle-aged man who had come to buy electronics stood silently in the corner of the shop. He watched everything. The accusation, the slap, the humiliation. When the police took me away, our eyes met briefly. At that moment, I had no idea that this stranger would change my destiny. After the police investigation, something shocking happened. They found no evidence that I stole the money, but the damage had already been done. My reputation was destroyed. No shop in the market wanted to employ me. People whispered behind my back, "That is the boy who stole from his boss." For months, I struggled to survive. There were days I had no food, days I slept on the street. I almost gave up on life. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A black car stopped beside me while I was working as a roadside cleaner. A well-dressed man stepped out. When he removed his sunglasses, I recognized him immediately. It was the stranger from the electronics shop. He looked at me kindly and said, "I remember you." My heart raced. Then he continued, "I saw everything that day. I knew you are innocent." Tears filled my eyes. Then he said something that changed my life forever. The stranger's name was Chief Okeke, a successful businessman. He gave me a job in one of his companies, but that was not all. He trained me personally. He taught me about business. He trusted me with responsibilities. For the first time in my life, someone believed in me. Years passed. I worked harder than ever, and slowly my life began to change.
7 years later, something unbelievable happened. I became the manager of one of Chief Okeke's biggest companies. I now drove expensive cars, I owned a beautiful house, I even helped my family escape poverty. But life had one final surprise waiting for me. One afternoon, a tired-looking man walked into my office building asking for work. When I saw his face, my heart stopped. It was Mr. Adewale. The once powerful shop owner now looked weak and broken. His business had collapsed. He had lost everything, and now he was begging for a job. When he looked up and recognized me, his face turned pale. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he slowly said, "Chinedu, please forgive me." At that moment, I remembered everything. The slap, the humiliation, the false accusation. But I also remembered something my mother once told me. A good man does not repay evil with evil. So I looked at him calmly and said, "I forgive you." And then I gave him a job. Not as revenge, but as proof that kindness is stronger than cruelty. That day, the man who once destroyed my life walked out of my office with tears in his eyes because he had just realized something powerful. The boy he once called a thief had become the man who saved him. Sometimes, the people who humiliate you today will stand before you tomorrow begging for mercy. Never give up. Your time will come.